I'll keep plugging away. I'll keep plugging away. Am I saving the world? Not using.
Hello, welcome to How Do You Brew? My name's Gideon. I'd love to introduce my good friend George, aka TREV. How you doing, Trev?
I am so good. I'm so happy to finally do something with you that involves tea. Feels somehow like we're in the same room, Gideon.
It does a bit, doesn't it? Like the white walls, you've got white walls. You know, just
Exactly.
you've got some noise going on in the background there. What are you doing?
Well, look, I'm a married man, as are you.
Yeah.
One of the benefits of that, on a good day, is that my wife gets really excited when I do things like this. And so she basically has brought me up. The thing is, I've just set the screen up in a really good place, so I can't show you too well. But she's brought up basically half of our kitchen. So we've got like a kettle, a milk bottle, some tea bags, cups, teaspoons, and so that's the kettle boiling.
Right.
I'm not one of these idiots that goes down to the kitchen to get a tea. No. The kitchen comes to me.
The kitchen comes to you. Nice. So what are we talking like? Just like PG tips in bags? I should say, I'm more of a coffee drinker, and I know that that's not really your life. So my whole thing is like beans and hand grinders and V60 and pour over kettle and all of that stuff. You're not about that life at all. You're strictly a leaf man.
I mean, I literally understood nothing of what you just said.
Brilliant.
That could have been Latin to me.
Brilliant.
I was nervous because I thought that you were this concept, if you will, was set up as more of a coffee drinkers thing, and I'm surrounded by coffee snobs. So my wife loves coffee, and I work at a church, and all of our staff team love coffee. So I'm a bit of a social pariah in most areas of life, and I'm just glad that you've accepted me. But I love tea. Absolutely love tea. So I'm not a PG Tips guy. So I grew up on PG Tips. The kettle's just boiling. This is perfect.
Perfect.
But now I must admit I've got a bit bougie, and I'm a Yorkshire Gold. Other tea is available. I'm not sure it's as good, but other tea is available. And you know what? I'm gonna say something here because what I notice. Basically, until you asked me to come and speak about tea, I didn't realise I was so passionate about it. And now I've convinced myself it's like the most important thing going on in my day. So the thing about tea is I find that tea drinkers have a bit of a like chip on their shoulder about not being coffee drinkers. So they go quite weird and they go to like T2 and they go like loose leaf and start drinking like, I don't know, weird Ceylon teas and all these kind of blends. Rubbish. Don't enjoy them at all. Breakfast tea is the one, and I would rather spend my days. Here he is pouring the kettle. I'd rather spend my days finding an absolutely top-notch breakfast tea than messing about with all the artsy-fartsy herbal stuff.
Right.
So sounds a bit cynical, but it's true.
But it's bag tea. You're not loose. You're not a loose leaf kind of guy.
I tried loose leaf for a while, and I got a couple of those teapots where you put it in the metal bit in the top, and. Don't know if it was just I wasn't washing it properly. I'd always end up with little bits of the tea leaf like in the drink. I probably honestly wasn't doing it right, but I ended up just feeling like I was picking bits of black tea leaf out of my teeth.
Yeah.
So I'm a bad guy, and I think it works, man. And I heard recently I watched a little YouTube, and apparently the perfect amount of time to brew a cup of tea, or what you're supposed to do, is 5 minutes. Which is really long. If you consider when you're making a cup of tea, like it feels like a couple of minutes feels like a long time, but apparently you're supposed to pour the water in and leave it for 5 minutes. And because I've always been like, you can't do that, otherwise it stews, doesn't it? And you get that weird like
on the top. Yeah.
But apparently that's to do with the water, not the tea brewing.
Yeah.
So if you've basically got old water in there, or basically your kettles, I don't know, hasn't been cleaned out in a while or whatever, that's what makes it do that rather than the brewing.
But what water? Is it like straight from the tap? Do you have a filter?
It's straight from the tap, I must admit. It is straight from the tap. We have lovely water here in Nottingham, actually. I grew up down south and all of our water was chalky.
Yeah.
Really hard and really cloudy. So yeah, we've got nice water. But I do hear these things. I mean, I don't know on the coffee side of things, but I hear that water's a really big deal in the coffee world.
Yeah, you have to like I I've got like a Brita filter that we use, but like some of my friends who are like really, really into it, they actually buy like bottled water to make coffee with, which like I think having a water filter. Look, I grew up on the south coast as well, and like I like chalky. Sussex. I'm from West Sussex, so I like chalky water. Now I live in Molesey, which is like really close to the Thames, so we get like London water, and London water is disgusting. Like you just can't just if you think London water tastes good, like just go somewhere else and drink the tap water, like because London water just tastes really bad. So I think you do actually need to filter it and stuff. And so I probably wouldn't buy like bottles of water, plastic, all of that stuff. Not for me at all. But I do think like having some nice water is probably important. But I mean, in Nottingham, it's basically the north, isn't it? So the water's like quite good up there.
It is, and there's there's not like millions of people all scrambling for the same water like there is in London.
Yeah.
So it's I feel like it's a bit less expensive as well. That's probably not true, by the way. I feel like since leaving London, everything's less expensive. So that applies to water as well. But yeah, it's funny you say that though, because I like I say, I do have a lot of dear friends who are like really into coffee, like yourself. And one of my friends worked at some like really, really well-known, I don't know the name of it, but well-known coffee shop in Bath. Apparently it's won loads of awards and stuff.
Okay.
And the guy who owns it did his PhD. So I think his PhD was in chemistry, and he did it on essentially water. So you go to his coffee shop, and it's like a classic, really nice coffee shop. Everything you'd expect, like pine wood and minimalist and all that. And then in the front, they have this guy's PhD all like published. And that you can buy, and basically the story behind this PhD, two different worlds colliding there. This PhD is they basically entered their coffee into this like World Coffee Championships or whatever every year, and I think it was in Canada or something like that. They'd enter their coffee in, and their coffee was like that. Throughout the year, everyone would tell them from all around the world, like, this is like incredible, like it's just absolutely amazing. And they'd go to this competition and they like wouldn't even get in like the top 30 or whatever. And so super confused. They're like, just like we're sure we should be doing better than this. And this happened year after year. And then one year they sort of thought, well, let's basically like get rid of all of the possible anomalies and variables. And so they sent their water that they brewed with in Bath to this competition that, like I said, I think was in Canada, and they won it.
Wow! So there you go. It makes so much difference. They always say that. About like brewing beer and stuff as well. Like Guinness in Ireland tastes better than Guinness in London. I went on a brewery tour where the guy was just like, yeah, everyone says it's about the water, but I mean like matching water to like where you live is like A-level chemistry. It's really not that difficult. So. I don't know. Maybe it's just a thing. But
who knows? Maybe it's all spiritual. Maybe we're all missing a trick, and there's just some weird thing going on with water everywhere. And wow. Let's think about that for a while. Anyway, what I've realised is I've made my cup of tea now. I'm not gonna be able to drink it for like 10 minutes because it's so hot.
Do you put milk in tea? Are you?
Yeah. So I brew it really, really, really strong because I like lots of milk in it. So I can't stand like milky tea where it's just like not even beige, like just off white.
Yeah.
I brew it for ages so that even when I put loads of milk in it, it's still like builder's tea. Copper. Nice. Liquid copper, my dad would say. Liquid copper.
That's cool. I do drink tea. I drink Earl Grey tea normally, and I'm like doing a bit of like sort of just watching what I eat and drink a bit, and so I'm not having milk in my tea anymore, which is like it's all right. It's just like you say, you have to wait for the water to like cool down so you can drink it.
That's hard. I mean, I've only in lockdown I've only just started having sugar out of my tea. So I've now got to the point where I'm really enjoying it without sugar, but milk is like a bridge too far for me at the moment. That would just you're a good man.
Well, you don't have to. You don't have to. I think I have had friends who were like very purist about tea, and like they only like teapot tea. I hate teapot tea. It's not strong enough. Like it's got to be a cup tea. But that's just me. I'm doing a lot of talking here. I want to hear about you. So so Trev, you are a musician, and you're a singist and a guitarist, and a drummer, and all of that stuff. And your music, like we share some common interests, talking about like Under Oath, and we actually met. We went to the same theology college where you were training to be a vicarage, and I was just a lowly undergrad. But I had a dream where I was like, you were into American football, and I was just like, hey, this is weird, but like, do you like American football? And you were like, yeah, I do. And then we had a whole. That was basically our introduction. I only just remember
that. Was it? I didn't realise it was that mystical, but yeah, it probably was, wasn't it? And then we basically realised we loved all of the same music.
Yeah.
The rest was history.
The rest was history. So what what kind of music have you been doing? Like, tell me about. I mean, I prepared some questions like, where did your name come from? And then we'll just go through the questions really. But so go on. Let's start with that. Trev, where did your name come from?
Yeah. So Trev was my dad's name. The late great Trevor White. Actually, he was wonderful man. Very very close to my dad, and he basically was he was such a music lover. So I didn't come from a family of instrumentalists, but like my dad. Loved music and always loved it, and has so many. I won't get into it now. So many hilarious stories of, watching bands in like the 60s and 70s. He was born in 48, so he was like a teenager through the 60s and the 90s. So he literally saw a whole bunch of this stuff sort of firsthand, and so has had a massive vinyl collection, and like my earliest memories of some of my earliest memories of my dad was us sort of listening to music together in the car or whatever, even when I was really little. And so he basically, we were always very very close. He actually died when I was 20, when I that year, but he was always like super supportive when I was a teenager. All the different bands I played in, he'd always like come to the gigs, and and it basically, it just, when it came time to release my own music, I'd always I'd never quite been comfortable with like releasing something under my own name. I don't know why. I think probably lots of the people, I don't know if you're similar, but lots of the people I'd listened to, just did solo projects under different names, and I couldn't have that. So when it came to it, I was like, it just honestly didn't take much thought at all. I was like, oh, it's got to be Trev.
Yeah.
So that's it. I like the simplicity of it. I just like the kind of that sort of colloquial, like, the abbreviation, it just being so sort of ordinary. Do you know what I mean? It's so earthy, isn't it? Trev. All right, Trev. Yeah. And so that's where that comes from.
Wow. No, that's really cool. So is there a record that like changed your life or like made Trev? Like, is there obviously you talked about you played in loads of different bands and all sorts of different genres and stuff, but is there like one record that you can like pinpoint, you're like, this is the record that like was really like important?
This is really hard. You told me before this that you're going to ask me this question, and I'm still struggling. I won't lie, I've got my iPhone sort of like propped up against my laptop, and I've narrowed it down to 4. So
okay.
I'm just looking at it now, trying to like narrow it down to 1.
Well, you can have more than one. It's okay. I think the guy yesterday said that he had more than one. So just you can be as specific or non-specific as you like. It's okay. We're in the age of iPhones and iPods, so you don't even need to like one type of music anymore.
Yeah, so. Totally. Well, yeah, okay. Well, so I would say probably my earliest memories of music were Pink Floyd, and so in a sense, in terms of like changing my life, I think I probably caught the bug for wanting to actually play music myself rather than just listening to it from that. And the album specifically, there was obviously Pink Floyd have got loads of amazing albums, but the one that I remember listening to the most was actually a live album called Pulse, which I think was recorded at Earls Court. Right. It's like a whole mishmash of everything from like Dark Side of the Moon to The Wall to, they do some stuff in the Final Cut and Wish You Were Here, and I don't know if they do anything from the Animals album, but anyway, and Time, and so I just like, I know that album still off by heart, where it's like a double disc thing and you know exactly what's coming next, and and I just think like, even I don't want to overanalyze it, I just love the songs, but there's something about even my earliest memories of music where I like the idea that particularly with Pink Floyd, it was like there weren't loads of rules. It was kind of like, it's kind of rocking. There were guitar solos and there were sung bits, but then you hear other bits from like Roger Waters, and he's essentially doing spoken word in album Final Cut. And then there's samples, and just the fact that someone's just like, oh no, it's absolutely permissible to just put a random sample from a TV show or something in the middle of a song, and that was like early on, and I think probably that then listening to bands that where you can see their legacy upon them probably made me appreciate Pink Floyd even more as I got older. But so that's probably, in terms of like I was gonna say an origin story. If anyone makes the TREV origin story movie, it'll be that live album by Pink Floyd, Pulse. But and then and then I think probably as a teenager there were, I mean, I won't go into all of them, but I think the three bands that come to mind for me are American Football, that we've already mentioned. For all sorts of reasons. My entrance into American Football was actually through my friend Dan, who still records the TREV stuff, and we were in a band when I was like 13. Not me and Dan, sorry, I was in a band with some other guys, and we went to his studio at the time to record, and he first showed me Cap and Jazz. And I just remember, I mean, it just blew my, I was like, this guy cannot sing, and yet it was just like the best thing ever. And it was amazing. And found out obviously that was Tim Kinsella, and this little, kid on the drums was Mike Kinsella. And then, found out about American Football, and just honestly for me, it was like, I've been obsessed with that way of playing the guitar ever since. Like, just the whole idea of the guitar being like super melodic and all those twiddly lines, and what I guess that kind of stuff that was pioneered by Victor Valril in Owls and Cap and Jazz, and they then took into that, and I've been obsessed with that ever since. I just absolutely love that, and it felt like that was like the first thing I ever listened to where I was hearing guitars like that. So American Football was a massive one for me, and my friends were really into that at the time. And then another band, Meet Me in St. Louis. Who, I mean, they were like, I remember listening to their first EP, which had a song on it called, the single I think was called Why Thank You Susie. And it was like, and I remember listening to it and just being like, it just sounds like the CD's skipping. What is this nonsense? I was like really anti, and then I got into them, and they did a full-length album with the I forgot his name, but the guy that I think produced the At the Drive-In album, and it was called Variations on Swing, and that was basically like the album I really loved. And again, it was one of those things where I think it's Toby, the lead singer. It was like it was like sung, and then there was some like weird sort of shouty bits, and there was like spoken word, and it was kind of like mathy, but then had these really beautiful moments. And what I like, it's just like there were no rules. They were just like, it just felt like they got in a room and just did what they wanted, and it was amazing. And there was something good about that. And for the same reason, the other one I've got to mention is Johnny Foreigner, who were a three-piece from Birmingham, and their album Waited Up Till It Was Light was like probably the album I listened to most as a teenager. And again, it was like they're way more poppy, but it was like so rough around the edges, but it was like I don't know, it was so good, but just really human. And I think that's it for me. And I know not everyone would agree, but I think that's probably those bands that have influenced that, whatever I do, I just want it to feel really human, and that can get really pretentious, and there's obviously lots of different ways of being human, but for me, that kind of that coming together of something really raw and honest with and maybe slightly underproduced at times as well. And love it.
I've always really liked the thing, like whenever I make recordings, like I always try and leave, if I'm talking to someone, or like there's a bit where you drop something, or like there's like random studio noise, I like to leave that in, probably because that's the kind of things they did on those records. Like, like American Football, like the intro to Never Meant is like, can we keep that one? Is it good?
Yes.
Doing the drum solo. Like, I'm just like, that's just such a life-giving moment, isn't it? When you're like, oh, like this is like a very real thing that happened. Like you're just there suddenly, even though the music's amazing. Like, it doesn't feel like really overproduced or anything.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? Like I think I'm going to step into dangerous territory here because I'm not a producer, but I do find like a lot of people are kind of, so much gear that comes out is essentially trying to make things sound like, I don't know, a Rolling Stones record or Deep Purple or whatever. And and I think it's all really valid, and I think it's really fun. But part of it as well is like they sort of got in a room and just all recorded it together, and they didn't have the. Do you know what I mean? I'm probably being totally naive here, and like I said, my friend Dan's probably going to watch this and be like, what are you talking about? But yeah, I do kind of feel like maybe we're trying so hard to reclaim it, but there was probably something of that sound that was just very, very human. And
Well,
yeah.
But it's like, I always think like the early Beatles records, like I'm not like a big, I respect the Beatles, but like I'm not crazy about the Beatles. But if you listen to some of the production, you're like, what were they doing? Like they obviously like, and it's not good, but like the musicianship is good and the songs are good. And obviously it was like, at the time it was like really cutting edge. It was like, I could record something that sounded like I just did it shouted into like a tape machine with a sock on it. Like it's just like, but something about them doing it is like, okay, but like when you're doing it, it's like, no, not good enough. Like you need to,
totally.
That just sounds like a demo. You obviously haven't had that mastered, or you obviously haven't,
And you can see it both ways, can't you? Because you do see some people use it as an excuse for something essentially just being crap. And I think you got to be good at your craft. I don't think like if you're tracking a guitar and you play the part completely wrong, it's like, oh no, it's just really human, man. It's like, no, you just played it badly. Yeah. It's like, but it's that thing of like you don't want to lose. I just think it's you've got to get the heart. You've got to try and keep the heart in something, and and not, again, this isn't a pitch, but one of the reasons I love Dan so much is he's a really good friend, but also as a producer, I just feel like he just has this ability to like. And I'm not just talking about he records all sorts of different genres, but they've all really feel like they've got heart. Do you know what I mean? They all do feel like, oh, this was like actual living, breathing human beings who recorded this, rather than everything, I don't know, being like overly grid edited and sampled or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I love that. I mean, and we, I do love the as far as possible keeping like if you can make a sound for real. I don't know. Again, I don't know why. I'm not going to overanalyze it, but I remember watching this DVD of that Block Party released, and I can't remember if it was Weekend in the City or Silent Alarm, whichever one of those was earlier. Can't remember which one.
I don't know.
But they they did a little studio diary of them recording, and there was one video where I think they essentially got like a guitar cabinet and threw it down a staircase, and then just recorded it at the bottom, and it was obviously all like out of this just broke. But I'm just like, there's no other sound in the world like that. As in, you're not ever going to be able to completely replicate like how the code was smashed up, and and some people listen to this be like, why would you want to? But there's something about I don't know, like when we're in the studio doing TREV stuff with Dan, it's like if we want to record a tape player, like we tend to get a tape player out and put a mic in front of it and record a tape player. And I don't know, I think in a world where everything's so digital and so disembodied, it's I just think it's does something for my soul.
I was half expecting you to say they threw the guitar cab down the stairs and then they recorded the guy who owned the guitar cab shouting and screaming at the band for like smashing up his probably vintage guitar cab with like green Celestian greenbacks or something really valuable inside it.
It's actually turned into a death metal record. Just this guy screaming over the Anyway.
Brilliant. So more questions, and I might have not even sent you all of these properly. Have you got a gig that you went to that was like changed your life, like either that you played or like one that just something you remember going to, you're just like, yes, this is like what I want to do, like anything like that?
So yes, I think I was thinking about this because again, like I'm not gonna try and give you 4 different answers on this one. I do remember some friends of mine back when I lived in Kent used to put on this Christmas festival basically called Tinsel Daya.
Brilliant.
Which is just a great name, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And basically every year they would book bands that I mean, there's such a strong music scene in Folkestone when I was a teenager, and there was such a love for like similar bands, and so lots of This Town Needs Guns before they were TTNG, and I think Tube Lord played once, and Tangled Hair, and like all these amazing people. And there was one year, and I can't for life me remember what year it was, but Yindi Howder were playing. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No.
But they're basically a post rock instrumental band, and they wrote actually, yeah. If you're watching this and you're interested, they wrote I think that their first thing was it Dash and Blast? But anyway, type in Yindi Halda. YNDI is the first word, and the second word is HALDA. Just amazing, and I think they were all. Don't know if they're still going or whatever, but they played there, and they started their set, and I remember they had all these hand chimes, and they, I think, must have been like the first 4 minutes of this song was essentially them spaced around the room playing on hand chimes, and then the violin came in and the drums kicked, and it was like, honestly, most people I saw around the room were crying. It was such a it was one of those, and you find this with music in a really particular way. It's one of those moments of just like, it was just electric. Just everyone was in. It just gripped everyone in the room. Like, it was even, you could be in that room having never heard of them before, and not even liking the genre, and you wouldn't have been able to help but like be drawn into it. It was just amazing, and just the ability of music to move people like that. Essentially sound waves. Causing such emotion, and that was huge.
Nice, that's really cool. And I guess on the flip side of that, what's the worst gig you've ever been to?
So I have got an answer for this. So I was in a band as a teenager with for a fair amount of time actually, and we were playing a local pub. I'm not going to mention the name of the band, and we were playing a local pub, and it was kind of like, it was really packed out, and it was sort of like a showcase thing that I got a feeling maybe the BBC was sort of doing, or some festival was doing a showcase thing. And anyway, we were playing this gig, and as we were playing, a fight broke out in the crowd. Brilliant. And our lead singer, like, really lovely guy, but he's a real like justice guy. So whenever he's very skinny, very slight, but would always like throw himself in to break stuff up. So, and he did. So he literally just like I'm sat behind the drum set, and I look round, and like he's just gone, and he's just in the crowd trying to break up this fight, and this just chaos ensues, and the whole thing that, I mean, obviously our set stops, and we basically never recovered, and it was just, we played so badly, and the whole thing, the whole gig was basically just, just ruined by this fight, and that was awful. That was like a really, really bad. It sounds funny now retelling it, but at the time it was like, oh, it's just so bad.
Especially if you're like doing something, I imagine it was like BBC Introducing or something like that. Like,
yeah, it was either that, or it might have been a music festival where we're doing a showcase for different bands they wanted to put on in the summer. Yeah. So it was like, it was one of those gigs that it wasn't. I think it was reasonably high stakes for us at the time. And, dude. Anyway.
Wow. I think that's in a way it's kind of admirable, but on the other way, you're just like, was it worth it? Like, they probably just left the gig and were like, oh, that was a fun fight, wasn't it? Like, should we go fight at the next one?
Yeah. It always feels like you've got a little bit more power if you've got a microphone as well, just to sort of tell people to stop doing it before you. Anyway, I'm sure you're from a good place, but so that was one of the worst.
Wow. It's very memorable. Like, so my friend Ben was talking yesterday, and he was like, I'm sure I've been to lots, but they're not, none of them are that memorable. And I was like, if it's really bad, do you remember being there? Yeah. Surely.
Totally. Totally. And I remember there was another one, I won't go into this, but I was in another band, and I was playing guitar in this band, and we were playing at the biggest venue in the town, and we hit into the first song, and it was just completely discordant. And we were like, literally, we had to just stop. And this happened like another 2 or 3 times. We were checking our tuning, and it turned out that our singer's guitar pedal, rather than, he'd pitched something weird on his tuner, and so rather than it being 440, it was like 444 hertz. Yeah. And so he thought he was completely in tune, but it was on a completely different, frequency, which was embarrassing. So anyway.
Oh well, you live and learn. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of you, because in a minute you're going to play some music for me, hopefully, and maybe tell me a little bit about like your journey with TREV, like what sort of stuff you've been writing about, what inspires you, just really broad broad terms, which I imagine you can expand upon for hours and hours, but just try and do it in like 5 minutes probably. So no pressure. But yeah, just a bit about like the project and what you're doing with it and where we can hear you and stuff.
Yeah, totally. So I'm basically releasing my third EP as TREV this year.
Yes.
And so the first one I released in 2016, which was called Monk Days, and that was, I guess, slightly longer, maybe like a mini album. I think that was 7 tracks all told. And then I did a EP in 2018.
Husband.
Called Self Other. Yeah, but
Self Other with
Husband
on it.
Husband. Yeah. And then this EP is called I Have Hope, and the difference between this and the other ones is that I'm going to be releasing this single by single over the next few months. So the first track, literally in order of how they come on the EP. So the first track, which is called Faith, is being released on the 19th of February, and then 19th of March we'll have the next track. 19th of April, you get it. Month, and then the full EP obviously will be released in May. And I just really excited. I feel like I think if you don't think the songs are good, you wouldn't bother recording them. So.
Yeah.
I think they're good, but I mean the inspiration behind TREV, I mean they are predominantly songs about God, because I love God, big time believer. Like Gideon's mentioned, I'm a vicar is what I spend most of my time doing, and I and I think that most of the songs are just an expression of what's going on inside of my own soul, my own life, and that necessarily is almost always connected with God. And so I guess it's spirituality, it's prayer. There's a lot of spoken word stuff there as well, which I think is probably far more so than any other release. I think they could be understood far more as prayers than poems this time, and I think it's about longing. It's about the future. I obviously didn't write it knowing that all the songs were written before lockdown, so I didn't. I think that's true. Yeah, basically all of them. So it's not, it wasn't this it's not a lockdown EP in the sense of I've written it for this period, but I do think that it's a song about hope, man. And, and I've had so many people, friends of mine from even years ago who aren't even vaguely religious, who randomly messaged me over the past few months who just feel hopeless. And, walking down in the hill the other day in our city and just bumped into a guy I hadn't met before, socially distanced, of course. And
of course.
And we ended up, and he just wanted prayer, man. Honestly, I've just felt like, people are desperate to know that there's a future, that there's a hope beyond all of this, and I think there is. And so that's what it's about. And I think it's kind of about the longing for that as well, a longing for a world that is renewed, where every bad thing is good, every wrong thing's made right, and that's it. And I have hope.
Great, that sounds great. Well, what are you going to play for us?
So I was going to play 2 songs off of the new EP. One Amazing. Is called so the 4 tracks are called Faith, Hope, Revival, and Rest. Okay. And I was going to play you the final 2 tracks, which is Revival and Rest. Revival, I guess, is kind of a song about a Jewish guy called Jonah, who you'll probably know from primary school. Jonah and the Whale. Yeah. And then
love that band.
And then Rest is great band. Yes. I you know what? If I had time, I'd get into another story. Because my dad actually ended up chatting to them at one point, not knowing who they were.
Noah and the Whale.
As in the band. Anyway, Noah and the Whale. Yeah, not Jonah and the Whale. But and then the next one's called Rest, which is the final song. It's a much shorter one, and I guess probably maybe inspired a little bit more by Julian Baker, Phoebe Bridgers, that kind of thing. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Great. Well, thank you so much for watching. George, thank you so much for being here and chatting with me. It's always great to hang out, and I'm just going to let you play your songs, but don't hang up. We'll chat after this. But TREV.
Here I am
I never said I was a prophet, never said I heard things clear, but there's a ringing in my eardrum, and there's a voice within my heart. So I run into the mouth of a harbour, to the belly of a ship, and I was dreaming when the storm hit. And now I'm drowning off the side of a boat, I taste sea salt in my throat. I woke up in the dark, don't know if my eyes are open or whether they're shut. I guess these flashes seem bright as my body slowly dies, that chemical induced high as I walk into the light. But the light never takes me, death itself forsakes me, and in the belly of a whale a deeper truth illuminates me. It holds, humiliates me, drawing hymns and desperate pleas, prayers swimming in the seas. My God, just please don't leave. I scream, I bargain for release, you can do anything with me. I stand up, I feel the sun along the shoreline, a temporary bliss, and then the burden of your kindness, and the bruising of my ribs. So I walk on, making peace with all my hauntings, shaking hands with all my ghosts. This was not the end I chose, not even close. I'm in the last place that I wanted to be, but I can't stop moving my feet. People, shadows, places, moving pictures, moving faces. Standing up now, people hear me, speaking words now, ground to greet me. Closing eyes, hear hesitation. I'm alive, still celebration, like a bedroom on the river. There's a stillness, there's a shiver, like a cell now multiplying. There's a newness, there's a dying. There's a spirit in the city, there's a movement in the city. There's a hope within the city, there's a mercy in the city. Dying debts within the city, kings that wept within the city, words that swept around the city. A fire burns within the city, but they're not burning in the city. A weight is crushing in the city, but they're not crushed within the city. There's a name within the city, a holy name within the city, and I felt rage within the city when I saw how good you are. I see the pain, but not the picture, the crooked lines, but not the figure. I hear a sound, but not the music. I see your heart, but I can't choose it. I see a cross, but not a savior. I want a God, not a redeemer. Give a cure, I chose a plaster. I see a chest, but not a chest. treasure. I want your hand, but not your face. I want your justice, not your grace. Just so hopeful that it hurts me, so much mercy that it scares me. Your love, it taunts and tears me, and you breathe me back to life. I see a drop, you fill an ocean. I pray a prayer, you start emotion. I want to make you fit my story, but really I'm part of your story. Holy, 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 righteousness and majesty, righteous reconciliation, redemption and freedom. Wash me fall apart, put me back together. Oh, I need your hand, I need it, I need it. Oh, I need your hand, I need it. So awaken me, awaken me. So awaken me, awaken me. So awaken me, 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 awaken me. See grace, see peace, my fears released, my heart and soul to overflow in praises, hymns and places. I can hardly see. God help me see. I doubt to buy you like super glue. Hold me so well, it's hard to tell. You're really spread right through me, and I'm a kid with crowns drawing you now. I'm a kid with crowns drawing